Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me. It's Allan Barry Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. It's Sunday, July the 6th, and I got a special report that I wanted to put out tonight. Yesterday, I did a really big report where I talked about um, a review of my 2025 Outlook report and how those calls and made it through the first half of the year, and also gave an outlook on some of the things that how I see those, gold, silver, copper, the stocks, the politics, the interest rates, the US dollar. I must say, I think I did a pretty good job of my calls. But that's always up to my audience to decide ultimately what my grade is. I think I compare pretty incredibly, actually, compared to most of my peers. So have a watch of that. Before I get today, the show's going to be about my picks in those metals. Uh, Before I get started, I think we got a lot of news coming out over the next week and beyond. One of the topics that came up over this weekend was Elon Musk is starting his America Party. I think he could ruffle some feathers on both the left and the right if they focus in if they win enough seats, they can definitely sway votes in either direction. So that's interesting. On Friday, the Trump's big spending bill was put out, which I think is going to drive the death spiral of debt even worse. And so that's the key factor of why I'm bullish on gold, the death spiral of debt, cost of servicing the debt, and that's not going to change with this big spending bill. Another thing that came out is Trump and his tariffs. His deadline, his 90-day pause is over as of a couple days from now, and he's talking about implementing new tariffs that will start in August. So that kind of turmoil will be back in vogue, if you will, or back in the headlines for sure. And then, of course, this weekend we also have the BRICS meetings, and I'm watching that closely because this is the first meeting that they've had this big tariff uh, tantrum to deal with. And who knows, maybe there will be some big announcements coming out from the BRICS meeting. So I'm going to have a lot to talk about next week and beyond. But today I really wanted to focus in on my picks. So I'm going to do a share screen here. Just bear with me a second while let's get started. I'm not going to go into the same kind of detail as I did yesterday. You can find that on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. The big thing takeaways are, you've got back in 2024, so a little early 2024, so a little over a year ago, the chart went from the bottom left to the top right. Along the way, it made a series of record highs. I talked about these basing periods, this one in early 2024, then a big run, another basing period from April, May, June, and then in July it had another very powerful rally, then more sideways action. This time it was only a short period of time, mid-November till about end of the 2024, and then another big blast off. And I see it's here again in another basing period that will put us in a position for another significant rally. But again, more details in that report yesterday. But before I get talking about my picks, I also wanted to show the similarities that I'm seeing in silver. So you got the bottom left, top right action in silver. Copper, very similar, bottom left, top right. Platinum has recently broken out quite substantially. Look at that move from the April lows of around 878. Well, that's a spike low, but let's say the low was around $900. It's up to 1,408 in a matter of a few short months. Palladium, it's been improving along that range as well from 880 to 1140. So why I'm bringing this up before I'm talking about my picks is because I think that this is indicative of us going through the start of the next great metals bull market. Gold always leads the way, then silver, copper, other metals join the party. That is now happening. And you'll see, and when I start talking about the stocks, the same thing is happening in the stock. So I think we're at that, new metals bull market that I believe will rival and surpass the 2001 to 2011 metals bull market. So great time to be looking at the metal stocks. And I've got a good list to talk to you about today. So let's go here. I'll first start out with the GDX. So you've got the big ETF that everybody follows. I'm going to go back to a similar time frame. So early 2024, lower left, top right. Really powerful move from these lows. It was at 25.77. Now it's at 52. So that's 100% gain. In 2025 alone, you're looking at about a 33 start to the year, 33 and change, and now 52. So that's a 50% move. Now, you put that into the context of every other asset class out there, and the gold and the gold stocks are at the top of the list. The gold stocks are actually at the very top of the list. And why I think that's important is I believe that it's not going to be long before more institutional investors have to start investing in generalist institutions, have to start investing in the sector, not just the metals, because they're going to start hearing from their clients, well, how much exposure do we have to gold and silver and copper and the stocks? If we aren't, why aren't we? And I think that money will start moving towards those funds that have exposure to those metals. And so here, the VanEck ETF, the GDX, is a very good indicator. And let's, before we get into specific names, let's look at the JDXJ, which is the junior gold miners. And again, very similar. Bottom left of the chart, top right, bottomed at about 31 and is now at 68. So that's over 100% gain. Similar action in the early part of 2025, 42 to 68. So you're looking at about a 50% gain there. Again, where are you finding that kind of performance in 2025? You got to look at gold, and you got to look at the gold and silver stocks. All right. So I'm going to kind of go from top down. I'm going to start with my majors and then my mid tiers, my junior gold miners, my developers, my explorers with important discoveries, and explorers that have the potential to make important discoveries. All right. So let's start out with Agnico Eagle. Now, Agnico Eagle has been during all this big run in the price of gold, they were my go-to pick for the major gold miners. And as you can see, they bottomed here at about $44. This is the Canadian price, I think. Hold on, I want to get rid of one of these moving indicators. And I want to get rid of this. I like less cluttered charts, the better for me. All right, so let me move this up. So let me make sure I've got the Canadian. Let's go to Canadian. I'm Canadian. Um, so okay, in Canadian dollars, the bottom was in 2024 at about 59. So it's now at $163. So as you can see, it outperformed the price of gold. It outperformed the price of the ETFs. That's why I picked them. And the fundamental reasons why I picked them and have spoken about them many times in my reports is that they're firing on all cylinders. The company is making records in free cash flow quarter after quarter. They're having no problems replacing their current production with new deposits. They're increasing their production. They're bringing their costs down. Really a company that's firing on all cylinders. And of late, they've kind of been going sideways, and now are touching that 50-day moving average. Seems like every time they touch it, it's a good time to be a buyer. And I think the catalyst for them is their quarterly report that'll come out later in the year. Um, and so this is my premier pick for the major gold miners. And I think it's pretty clear that they've done very good. Again, $59 to 163 Canadian dollars. And the US version is the same percentage gain. So that's the Agnico Eagle pick. Now, um, in early, this is Newmont. In early April, right around in this dip here, I added them to my list, to my picks. And since then, they've gone from about $44 to 59. So very nice 30% gain there since I picked them. And it also happened just prior to this Golden Cross. And why I've turned from having them on my radar screen to picking them is last year they were going through some changes, let's say. One of those was that they had decided to sell off all of their tier two deposits, and they originally anticipated selling it for about 2 billion, and I think the ultimate price tag came in at over 4 billion. So they did really well on selling off of their tier two assets. And then they also were digesting the acquisition of Newcrest. Now, that always takes time in any takeover in any industry because it takes, a few quarters after the takeover is completed for them to fully integrate the company, and then the analysts on Wall Street to then look at the how that is playing out in the bottom line. And so I wanted to get ahead of those curves. One of them being that now Newcrest is fully digested. And secondly, by selling off their tier two assets, they are now able to focus on optimizing their tier one assets. And so I felt comfortable making that pick back here, and it's turning out very good. And I think it will continue. And another reason that I picked them then is because I call it the Newmont effect. Okay. So Newmont is a household name when Wall Street or retail and generalist investors think about gold miners. And so, they are also 12% of the GDX. So they have an outweighed, they're the largest portion of the GDX. So they have a way of impacting the GDX. And so why that's important is because, like again, when the generalists look at the gold miners or gold stocks, they tend to look first at Newmont because they don't know Agnico as well. And secondly, they look at the GDX. And if those two are performing well, it gives the generalists a confidence level, a higher confidence level. And so this Newmont effect was another reason that I picked Newmont because I felt that they're going to have a very positive movement in their stock that would also be good for the generalist investors to get excited about the gold miners, gold developers, the gold stocks all across the spectrum or the food chain, if you will. All right. So those are my two majors. Now I'm going to go into my mid tiers. And Agnico Eagle, or sorry, Alamos Gold. Again, I'll go to the Toronto stock chart. So it performed much like Agnico Eagle. Uh, bottom left of the stock chart, top right. They started out. They were down around $15.50, and are currently trading at $36. Been as high as $43. So again, this is another company that significantly outperformed the price of gold and the index. And if you're going to be an individual stock picker, why take an index where you get the good, the bad, and the ugly when you can just focus in on the best? And when it comes to the mid tiers, in my opinion, Agnico or Alamos Gold is the premier. And so that like Agnico Eagle, they've been going sideways right on that 50-day moving average for the last couple of months. But they're also going to report their quarterly earnings at the end of July. And I think that's going to be the catalyst. In fact, with all of these so far, Agnico Eagle, Newmont, and Alamos, I think you'll start seeing them drift up before they put out their quarterly report because people are going to want to front run that because they can see that gold had its best quarter ever, and so these companies are going to make a lot of money in the second quarter of 2025. And so if you have gold moving up, which I think we're about to see it have another strong run this month, and then you've got these companies making lots of free cash flow, that combination will help them get strength going into their quarter and then after their quarter. If we keep seeing gold have another exceptional quarter like it just did, or series of exceptional quarters, these are the names that I think will get a lot of attention from the institutional side of the generalist investor that want exposure to gold stocks. Okay, Orla Mining. Orla is a company that I picked. Oh my gosh, it was way back in this sideways action, and they've really done great over, well, since actually late 2023. They were trading at about $3.50. They closed on Friday at 1381. They also had a very strong 2024. Let me just fix this so we see parts of 2024. There we are. and have really taken off due to acquisitions. They were one of the buyers of one of Newmont's mines, and that has been very well received. As you can see here, they were down around $4.76 and have done very well. You look at how they've done in 2025. They started the year at about let's say $8, and now they're trading at 14 or sorry 13.80. And again, here's another company that is on a fundamental basis is doing its job, and they're outperforming the price of gold, and they're outperforming the index. This is what you want to focus on, folks. I do not believe in diversification. I don't believe in owning everything when you can focus in on the best of the best. And when it comes to the majors or the mid tiers, I try to focus in on the best of the best. And, I can't pick every mid tier, but I think I've done pretty good with my Alamos Gold and Orla Mining. Okay. So the next echelon of companies that I look at are the junior gold miners. These are the ones that produce gold, but they produce less than the mid tiers and the majors. Now, one of them is a tiny little company called Borealis Mining. And Borealis is a emerging, they've only been trading since approximately 1 year ago, not even. And so the stock chart doesn't tell you a lot. I'm going to get over here so we can see, basically for the last, well, all of this year and part of last year, the stock was basically going sideways at about 60 cents. But recently they announced their path towards becoming a junior gold miner. And they're an underfollowed junior gold miner in the making that I think has a very powerful year ahead or future ahead of them. How they're starting out their production is they're contract mining a stockpile that has never been put on the leach pad. They're fully permitted, so that makes them unique for a junior. And so they're taking that stockpile, crushing it down, putting it on the leach pad, and then they'll put it through their processing facility to extract the gold. And that effort, which is ahead of schedule and ahead of budget, is now underway. So that will start to generate gold production. It won't be big gold production. It'll be small gold production, especially relative to a larger junior gold miner or of course a mid-tier and a major, but it's the path towards production. So in it after they that production, small scale production from the processing of the stockpile will then last them well into 2026. And during that period, they're going to be looking at taking additional material from the current open pits. Now, those open pits are still open for expansion because back when they were in production, over a decade ago, they were the price of gold was much cheaper. And so you get a higher price of gold, and some of that material that was left behind now becomes lucrative material. And they're going to look at test mining that and then putting that onto the stockpile and processing that. So that should run them right to the end of 2026 as a emerging junior gold miner. And then they're also doing a significant amount of exploration drilling around the pits to expand on those pits. And under the pits and in other targets on the project to find new deposits to bring into the production profile. So they're a new producer. They are they're going to ramp up production over the next year to year and a half, and then they're going to be processing new material from the old or from hopefully they find new deposits. I think they will. I've talked about the company in the past. They've got a phenomenal exploration potential because really when this thing was in production, when the Borealis mine was in production, all the drilling was focused on where they were producing from. They didn't really do a lot of exploration, and yet they have a 20 square mile alteration zone. Now, why that's important, folks, is when the metals bearing fluids make their way towards the surface, they interact with the country rock and chemically alter that. So where you see the large alteration is a fantastic place to look for new deposits. And they have one of the largest alteration zones in all of Nevada that is underexplored. And so they've got all the things that I like in a junior miner, that a junior gold miner, and they're in Nevada focused. So they're an undiscovered gem now, but I don't think they're going to stay an undiscovered gem for very long. Now, they have attracted some very impressive shareholders, including Eric Sprott, who now owns, I think he's close to, well, over 5% of the company, and Rob McEwen. Rob McEwen owns around 15% of the company. So those two gentlemen that have made a good chunk of their fortunes from investing in junior or gold mining related stocks are in early on this one, and I think they're in early on an undiscovered gem that won't stay that way for very long. Now, speaking of Rob McEwen, uh, Rob's company, McEwen Inc., they recently changed their name from McEwen Mining to McEwen Inc., has recently gone through a very impressive breakout. The lows of the year were around $6.50. On Friday, they closed, this is US dollars, by the way. They closed at $11.37. But you can see a double bottom here, then a higher low, and then a higher high, and a higher high. And they've just gone through a golden cross. So some of the reasons for this are that copper is making an important breakout. And McEwen Mining has one of the best undeveloped copper mines in the world. It's in the top 10 of in size. It's in the lowest cost quartile, which makes for a very exciting future copper mine. Now, their catalyst on that project, there's two coming up. One is that they are completing a bankable feasibility study. So that's an important document because that is basically the last of what I call the development discount window of the Lassonde curve. So there's two curves, two run-ups on the Lassonde curve. The left one is the one when a junior explorer makes an important discovery, the stock blasts off, people make a lot of money. Then there's a development discount window. And then when they bring it into production is the right side of the Lassonde curve. Now, just before they bring a project into production, is what is I call the sweet spot of the right side of the Lassonde curve. And companies tend to ramp up as they're getting towards the building of a new mine. And then as they bring it into production, it's off to the races. And so they're doing the bankable feasibility study. And secondly, they're looking at taking the McEwen copper public. Now, how this deal is structured is that McEwen Mining owns 46% of McEwen Copper, the private company. The other key shareholders are Stellantis, one of the world's top four automakers. Rio Tinto Ventures, or Rio Tinto has a venture called Newton, which looks at unique or proprietary method of extraction of copper from a deposit exactly like this. So those two companies own around 15%, and Rob McEwen himself owns around 13%. So when McEwen Copper goes public, which could be in the second half of this year, after they get the feasibility study out, that will be a very tight vehicle. 46% of it will be owned by McEwen Mining. Let's say 15% will be, or around that, will be owned by Stellantis. Around the same will be owned by Newton, the Rio Tinto venture, and around the same will be owned by Rob McEwen. So if investors want access to the Las Azules project, they'll have a very tight share structured company that will trade on the New York Stock Exchange to get their position into. So that's the McEwen copper side of the company. On the gold side of the company, they're a junior gold miner and a fairly sizable one at producing around 130,000 ounces in 2025. Another thing that's helped them out since about here has been that they've now started the construction of their new gold mine called Stock. And so they've cut into the ground and they're building the underground network of underground workings to get to three ore bodies. And This will help them to increase their production and to also bring down their costs. I love seeing miners that are increasing their production and then bringing down their costs. And That is what McEwen Inc., or formerly McEwen Mining, is doing with their junior gold mine. Now, in order to replace what you mine, that comes down to exploration. And they're having excellent success. They're spending, I think it's around $20 million on drilling this year at their Black Fox complex in Ontario, which is about 20 kilometers from the Stock mine. And there they have been finding a lot of gold with their drilling. So they're doing really good with their drilling on the Gray Fox, which is south of their Black Fox mine, and Froome, which are the ones that are finished production. Although it does look like they're having some success at Froome, which could increase the production and keep that mine going longer. But the exploration is about 3 kilometers to the south, where they found a couple million ounces that have about a 2 gram margin between their cutoff grade and their average grade. And so at today's prices of, over $100 per gram, the cutoff is an estimate of what it would cost you to mine that. So about a gram or so to mine it. And then the margin between that and the average grade is the potential profit. So when it comes to their gold, junior gold mine company, they really got a great story there. And then you add in their copper project, and their valuation is about $500 million Canadian, or sorry, US. And there are junior gold miners that are a long decade or more away from producing with higher values. So even with this recent rally, they still have a very modest valuation relative to the quality of their assets. Recently, I did an interview with Rob McEwen, and we talked about the value proposition. So I'm not going to go into that here, but you can go on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com and look for that interview with Rob McEwen. Getting back to the chart, look at this beautiful cup forming. And this looks like one that still has a ways to go before it creates a handle. And the way it's going up the right side of that cup, I think that handle will be very small and then more upside. Really love to see this golden cross here, and the stock trading well above both the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. So McEwen Mining has been getting a lot of traction since it bottomed here in March and April, and is now in a very strong breakout. So that's one for you to take a look at for the junior gold miners. Okay, now I'm going to go through my developers that are alphabetically. Um, and I will also add that McEwen Mining belongs in this developer section as well, because again, they've got one of the best undeveloped copper projects anywhere in the world, and they're in the top 10. And most of those top 10 undeveloped copper mines are owned by major mining companies. I think there's only about three of them that are owned by junior mining companies. So again, here's another reason that I'm so bullish on McEwen Mining. And as I said, they belong in the developer section as well, but I've just gone over them, so I don't need to again. All right. So Amex Exploration. Amex uh, is a gold developer with a very high quality gold mine in or gold development project in Quebec. Uh, they are a sponsor, by the way, as is Borealis that I talked about earlier. Sorry, I didn't do those disclosures. Amex has a very special project that I think will be one of Canada's new high-grade gold mines, and they've got a very interesting way to push it forward. And so before I talk about the stock chart, let me talk about the fundamentals. So prior to this, when they hit this low here in April, they've improved quite dramatically since then. And part of the reason for that is they did an updated resource estimate, and they increased the size by about over 100%, and they increased the grade by 43%. So now just on the one deposit alone, which they call their Champagne zone, it was formerly called the high grade zone. They're looking at 1 million ounces of high grade gold with an average grade of about over a half an ounce per ton. That is hard to find these days, folks, especially in a jurisdiction like Quebec, which is one of the best mining jurisdictions in the entire world. And so they've got a special project. And so let's talk about the stock, and then I'll talk about the catalysts. So as you can see here, it bottomed at about 80 cents, has had a high of, let's say, $1.60. So that's pretty much a double. And lately it's been going kind of sideways. Here it had an important golden cross point and is still trading significantly above its 50-day moving average and its 200-day moving average. And now the 200-day moving average is starting to trend upwards. It's gone from its bottoming, and now it looks like it can head higher. So the catalysts, the things that they're working on are quite exciting. One of those is that they're going to do a bulk sample. They're applying for their permit to do a bulk sample. And the idea there is that because it's in a very good mining jurisdiction where there's mills around there that could process their material, they want to start taking a significant amount of material off of the high grade zone, the Champagne zone, to assess it for the recovery of gold. And because it's one of these very high grade systems, the bigger the sample you can get, and what I mean bigger is instead of taking a little drill hole with a couple inch, 3 inch diameter, cutting through the rock, the tons of rock, you take tons of material out and you send that. So your chances of getting all the gold in 1 ton is much better than putting a 3 inch hole through 1 ton. And so that will give them a more representative grade. And I'm quite encouraged by seeing that as they transition their deposit from inferred to indicated, they saw a big increase in the size and a big increase in the grade. And that rarely happens these days, folks. Usually, when you're drilling something off and you go from inferred to indicated, you actually see it decline. And so for them to get such a positive, that's why the stock, I believe the stock has improved so much of late. And then secondly, they're also looking at doing a preliminary economic assessment to solely assess their original preliminary economic assessment assessed all their deposits, the high grade zone as well as the satellite open pits, and that was in a preliminary economic assessment. But this new one they're working on will only do the Champagne zone and assess that high grade zone as first as a toll milling operation. So you take the material, you get a toll or a contract miner to come in, take the material out, and move it to a nearby mine or mill to have the gold recovered from it. This would help cut the costs of building a mill, a milling operation right on the property. And it would also give them the potential. We'll know more about that potential when they put the actual preliminary economic assessment out. But that will give them the details about how this would look in a preliminary economic assessment of a toll milling operation. So the idea is you go into small scale production and toll milling it to then use the free cash flow from that to then build your standalone mill on the project. So it's a very staged and smart way to bring the project into production. And so I again, they're a sponsor. I like their story a lot. They pay me to create content, but they don't pay me for my opinion. That's the case for all sponsors. And but yeah, do your own homework and just check out their news releases and their corporate presentations, and I think it'll be very evident to you quickly as to why I am so excited about what they're doing. And obviously, you can see it in their stock performance, and they also have a big a mid-tier El Dorado Gold. A mid-tier gold miner is a substantial shareholder of Amex. Okay, so now I'm going to go to Generation Mining. And Generation Mining is a developer that has a copper and palladium with some platinum and other metals in it, advanced project that has now received all of its permits. So earlier, when I was talking about McEwen mining, I was talking about that sweet spot of the right side of the Lassonde curve before a company brings something into production. Now, the last stage, well, the second to last stage is getting all your permits. The last stage, to be when you get into that sweet spot, is when you start construction. And why I like Generation Mining a lot is because they have platinum and palladium in this project. And I always prefer to invest in the companies that have the metals in the ground that I'm bullish on. And for investors that are bullish on platinum and palladium, there is very few companies to look at because platinum and palladium had been down for so long. They're now coming to life, and so they were down, and that meant that less exploration happens, less mine developments are pushed through the development stage of the Lassonde curve. So there really is not very many opportunities to get into platinum and palladium companies, and Generation Mining has one of those development projects. And so, as you can see here, they bottomed in March at around 11 cents. They got up to as much as 45 cents. They've had a bit of profit taking, which is natural after a big move like that. But notice that they went through a golden cross here in late May. And even though there has been profit taking, it's still trading significantly above the 50-day moving average and almost, well, quite significantly above the 200-day moving average. So if you are like me and you believe that palladium and platinum are going to go up, and you want exposure to a company that has palladium and platinum on their project, you don't have very many to choose from. And Generation Mining is one of those that I'm quite bullish on. And recently I did an interview with their CEO, Jamie Levy, and I advise you to go to my Substack, rocksandstocks.substack.com, and look for that interview with Jamie, because we talked about where they are today and the catalyst coming forward. Jamie is also very well informed uh, about platinum and palladium market, and also points out that this is basically a copper palladium with platinum kicker and other metals as kickers. And so they kind of are in the development of let's say, a copper and palladium project with platinum and other metals, gold, silver, and base metals as a kicker. So it's really an undiscovered gem. Gen M is their stock symbol, so they're almost a gem in their name. And as I said, do your homework. Go to that interview. It'll help you understand a lot about Generation Mining. All right, the final developer that I have is Vizsla Silver, and they are a rock star of a developer. As you can see, that bottom in late 2023 was at about $1.30. Recently, they've been up to $5 a share. They closed at Friday at $4.12 a share. They recently got $100 million bought deal financing. Okay, so let's talk about the metrics on this silver gold developer. They've done a preliminary economic assessment and have a blockbuster numbers in that. You just cannot find that very often in any metal developer. Their internal rate of return, which is one of the metrics I look at, is in the triple digits using current, so over 100% internal rate of return, um, eh, based on current prices. The base case is about 85% IRR. So even that on its own, you don't find many like that. You factor in current prices of metals, and it's off the charts. So another interesting thing about the company is that on the metrics is that to bring it into production, they're talking about a 220 or $225 million capex. Okay. And if you use the base case, the payback of the capex happens in 9 months. If you use current prices, it's less than 6 months to pay back that $225 billion at capex. Again, another peer leading statistic for companies that are doing what they're doing. Now, most times in mining, the junior that finds something needs to be bought out or joint venture with the bigger company because they can't build it on their own. They don't have the money. They don't have the valuation that gives them the cost of capital to be able to build it on their own. This company has over $1 billion valuation, and with the recent financing, they have almost $200 million or more of cash in the bank. So they almost have their entire capex already looked after, and they plan on. They're thinking that construction could start in 2020, late 2026. So they're in a spectacular position, but well, they also have tremendous exploration potential on their project because they are in what are called epithermal vein system, and these are often found in clusters. And where you find one, you find several, and usually there's several mines in those kind of deposits. And what makes this a special one is because in Mexico you get these kind of projects are what all the mining has been, or most of the mining has been done on for several years. I hearken back to Silvercrest. My audience that's been following me for more than a couple of years knows I picked that early when they were in the Lassonde development discount window of the Lassonde curve. And recently they got bought out for, I think, about $14 or $15 a share. And so this is my Silvercrest 2.0 kind of story. And they're actually in a better position than Silvercrest was prior to Silvercrest bringing their Las Chispas mine into production. And another interesting thing is that the guy who built that mine, the Las Chispas mine, Simon Smirlik, is the chief operating officer of Vizsla Silver. So they tick off every box that you could ask for in a development company with a high grade silver and gold deposit that is moving towards production. And so Great performer, as you can see, bottom left of the chart over here in early 2024 at about $1.45, top right here. So it's significantly outperformed the price of gold and the price of silver and the price of the indexes. And it's a reflection on the quality of the project that they have. And I'm proud to say that they're also a sponsor of my work. And I've done interviews with, and including recently with their Mike Connert, their CEO, and you can find that on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. And check out all those interviews, and I think you'll understand why I'm so excited about Vizsla. All right. The next group is a group of one. These are what I call explorers with important discoveries. And I only follow one, and it's called Goliath Resources. They are my highest conviction uh, um, explorer with an important discovery, and are they have one of the best new discoveries in the Golden Triangle in many years, and I think it has the potential to be maybe one of the most important ever, which is saying a lot because the Golden Triangle of British Columbia is known for big high grade mines, and this one is a special discovery. So they also are one of these companies that went from the lower left to the top right. Back here in March, about 76 cents a share. They traded up to $2.82, currently trading at $2.33. This big move was based on their best hole ever at the project, and that made them move from, let's say, $1.06 to almost $3. So it just goes to show you what can happen when you have a monster hole, if you will. So they've been sort of going, they came off the high on profit taking. They bottomed at about $1.33. And since then, they have been ramping up with higher highs and higher lows as they are getting into their 2025 drilling season. And already in the early parts of it, they've had some very good news out that has them breaking well above the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. Um, there are lots of reasons to be positive on this company. The basics are they found a series of stacked high-grade gold veins that are similar to the Pogo mine, which was one of North America's great gold mines. And it has these gently dipping stacked veins, same as what are similar to what Goliath has found at their Surebet discovery. And then what's been emerging over the last, let's say, 8 to 10 months is that they're finding a series of vertical, what are called reduced intrusion related gold dikes. So these are vertical dikes that are cutting through the uh, gently dipping veins. And this is very exciting because if you look at, they've got about 14 of these vertical bodies and about the same amount of these flat lying bodies. And where they actually cross cut, they've got two um, gold mineralizing systems around the same age that are enriching these cross-cutting zones, which they're now being called the Goldilocks zones because it's kind of everything's just right to have enrichment by two gold systems or two gold events, if you will. Um, and that's tremendously exciting because there's a massive amount of these places where there's these cross-cutting they know they have one Goldilocks zone. The reason they know that is because the folks at the Colorado School of Mines did a detailed geological assessment, and they are the ones that determine that they have gold coming in with from two separate enrichments that are of different temperatures. One is cooler gold and one is hotter. And so these enrichment zones they're being called the Goldilocks zones are very exciting. But recently, the company also announced that they've got a third style of gold mineralization that they've just recently done relogging and found this new system with high grade gold in it as well. So they got three distinct gold bearing rock packages, all confined in this beautiful area that they call the Sherbet discovery. And yeah, I'm very excited about this. Again, it's my highest conviction gold explorer with an important discovery. And part of the reason why I don't have others is because I can't find any that compare to what Goliath has found. And they are still in the very early days of drilling into this spectacular system that I think will just get better and better as they do more drilling and they do throw more science at it. And they are right now in the very earliest days of their 2025 drilling program. And so I think they've got news coming out for the foreseeable number of months. So that's the Goliath story. Now, although I can't find a lot of explorers that with important discoveries that compare and make me confident enough to include them with Goliath, I have three that I'm calling explorers that I think have the potential of becoming explorers with important discoveries. Okay, so let's start out with uh, Hercules, uh, BIG.V, Hercules Metals. Um, Now, this company made a lot of noise in late 2023 when they made a discovery of a porphyry copper project in Idaho. This area had not been thought of as a porphyry belt, but it is in the same kind of rocks as the porphyry belt in British Columbia, where a lot of copper production has come from. But it kind of stopped at that border. And well, the exploration and the mining stopped at that border. But now it looks between Canada and the United States. And now it looks like, uh, uh, well, back then it looked like they had a new, well, I think it still does, a new copper porphyry belt or part of the British Columbia belt that comes down into Idaho. So what caused all this enthusiasm was the drill hole results, and then Barrick Gold, who wants to be in the copper porphyry business. They want more copper production, made an investment in the company. I think they averaged in at about let's say $1 per share. So when they made the announcement of that investment, the stock blasted off from let's say around 20 cents to $1.60. And as always happens, there's profit taking. I mean, come on, if you bought it 20 cents and you can sell it at $1.60 or anything better than $1, it kind of makes some sense to take some profits. So they've been kind of taking profits. They, let's say, kept about half of that big move. All right. but they've been kind of going sideways since last summer and until now. Now, porphyry copper deposits are not simple. When you find where they are exactly, they can be very big. That's why a lot of the great copper mines of the world are porphyry copper deposits. But they're not simple. They take work, they take geophysics, they take geochemistry, they take drilling, take work to figure them out. And so as they were waiting through their winter and waiting for the new drilling season to start, the stock has been going sideways with an average price of about 60 cents, which is where it closed. It's closed on Friday at 62 cents. This is Canadian, by the way. Now, they've had a news release out that, didn't really get the market too excited, but it got me excited because they've done a significant amount of geophysics and they've done a modeling of that geophysics. And the modeling, they believe, is giving them the means or the method or the vectoring to focus in where they find the guts or the sweet spots of the porphyry copper system. And recently they announced that they didn't have assay results out, but they confirmed with drilling that their model is standing up as they drill into it. So what that means is the model says drill here, the drilling says the model was correct. Okay. Now, of course, you need the assay results before you get too excited, but that's the kind of thing that if they do get in the drill holes, what got this excitement back here all built up, it could definitely have a significant breakout to new record highs. Now, do they have that? I don't know yet, but I like what they're saying. And also they announced that they're increasing the rig count on the property. So they've got a new geophysical model. They've confirmed that model with drilling in the sense that they can determine that they've hit it. Now they got to wait for the assays, but even before they get those assays back, they want more rigs on the property. So these are all pointing towards good things coming for the company. But again, we got to wait for those assay results. I like their chances of them delivering with those assay results. All right. So now I'm going to go to Inventus. Inventus is a very interesting company for me. It's a really, you see it, patchy trader. Back in October of last year, they were down around 3 cents a share. Recent Friday, they closed at 18 cents a share. It's been firming up as they've been doing some more drilling and putting out assay results. And what their project is, it's a conglomerate, gold-bearing conglomerate body. So these are in their case, it comes right to surface. Conglomerate deposits, the most important source of gold ever in the history of mankind, is a conglomerate deposit in South Africa called Witwatersrand. And they have found a conglomerate body in Ontario. And it has some of the same characteristics as Witwatersrand. Now it's still very early stages. They're doing a lot of drilling. Now the nice thing is that because the conglomerate comes right to the surface, they can drill a whole bunch of holes let's say 30 meters each, they can drill a whole bunch of holes. You know, a lot of gold deposits are found at 300 or more meters, so they can drill 10 holes of one going down deep. So they've done a big grid drilling from where they want to take a bulk sample from. And recently, they also announced that they've come into a agreement with McEwen Mining, one of my other top picks, to use their stock mill to process the bulk sample from Inventus's conglomerate gold deposit. I've looked at the drilling, I've looked at the profiling. These conglomerates are flat lying, like the bottom of a shallow lake, if you will, that comes right to the surface. And they can keep on going. I think at Witwatersrand, they're down to about 3 or 4 thousand meters. You just keep following it. And it's like a big lake that keeps on going and then gets deeper as you get away from the shallow end of the lake, if you will. And so they're up at the top, and it's like comes right to surface, and a good amount of the profile of that conglomerate is just 4, 5, 6 meters below the surface. And so that's the area that they're doing the bulk sample from, that they'll send over to McEwen Mining's mill at Stock to process. And so, really interesting story. They're not getting a lot of credit for how interesting it is, but they have a lot of catalysts. They got a lot of drilling they can do. They got the bulk sampling that they can do. I have done an interview a couple months ago, 3 months ago or something like that, with their CEO. And they kind of talk about the potential to do progressively larger bulk samples. And so that's kind of a modularized way of bringing a project towards production. I think their current permit gives them a chance to do 50,000 tons. And after that, they'll apply to make them bigger and bigger and bigger. So, yeah, it's a very interesting story. I mean, these conglomerates, they can they can be massive. Um, and I think they got the potential of having a very big and high grade one that they can, make a lot of money from. I mean, when you're only going down 5 meters or so to get to that material, it doesn't cost a lot compared to going down hundreds or 1,000 meters to get to gold in an underground operation. And even in open pits, a lot of times the actual good juicy stuff of the pit doesn't start till, let's say 50, 60, 70, 80 meters. Here it comes right out at the surface. Go to that interview and you'll learn more about why I like the Inventus story. All right. And the last explorer with the potential to become an gold explorer with an important gold discovery also has the potential of having an important copper discovery. Now, as you can see here, this company only started trading in March of 2024. And within a month and a half, they announced this phenomenal hit, 70 some grams per ton of gold. So a couple ounces of gold over 7 meters in a wildcat hole that was drilling for a geophysical anomaly, looking for base metals, and they find this sweet high grade gold. So this launched the stock from, what is it, let's say 16 cents to like almost a dollar, let's say, on the excitement of that spectacular hit. Now, they had to spend a few months waiting for the drilling season to get underway. And since then, it's been trending upwards. And they're actually drilling for base metals, on a VMS target and a high-grade gold discovery. They're, I think, about 2,000 meters apart. I'm very excited about the gold discovery because I see in the drill core that they presented that it looks like what they got in one hole, in the discovery hole, and then they followed that up this year's drilling campaign with, I think, another handful of holes around that discovery hole. And I'm seeing in the drill core the same kind of rocks as what came in the discovery hole. Now, of course, we have to wait for the assay results, but I'm pretty optimistic because when you get a 7 meter intersection of a couple ounces per ton of gold or more, that's not an accident. And usually, where there's that, there's more. And so I'm quite optimistic about the gold discovery. Now, they also had another project they call the Rush, which is a VMS target. And I've recently seen in their drill core from the Rush target, they were originally looking at a geophysical anomaly, and they hit stringers of massive sulfides, so little thin intersections of massive sulfides. And then they also got some chunky massive sulfides as well. And so it sounds to me like they might be on the edge of an important VMS discovery. Now, their geophysics, which were not really refined geophysics, showed a really big anomaly. But sometimes really big anomalies are not the best because they're done with wide line spacing between your geophysics. And so they don't have a lot of detail to them and a lot of depth resolution. So the fact that they use that kind of geophysical anomaly and are getting stringer sulfides and some massive sulfides is very encouraging. Now, will those will those return the kind of results that will get the market excited? I don't know. I think that they will kind of be more of an important technical success, if you will. Not when some companies when some people talk about a technical success, it's a very minimal kind of technical success. Um, if you use not the best resolution in geophysics to target something and you clip the edge of something, that's an important technical success to me. Okay. So that excites me. Now, they kind of have a triangle of targets. Over here is Ranger, where they've made the high grade gold. Up at the top of the triangle is what they call the Rush. And then over almost directly west of the Ranger, they have another target, which was their original target, by the way, which started out solely as a base metal discovery. And it just had that, in that case, it was just the technical success with their, I think they drilled about 3 holes into it. But I then did a lot of homework looking at the structural story of their project. And between Ranger and their, I can't remember the name of so they got the Ranger is the gold over here. They got another target over here. But in between those two is a structure. And then over where they hit the gold, they've got this east-west structure and a north-south structure. And just down on the north-south structure is where they made the big discovery. I think it's wide open from that point all the way to the hinge of this, or the intersection of the north and south and the east and west structures. And this target over to the west could be associated more towards a gold discovery than a base metal discovery. So I'm watching really closely for that, the results from that. So they drilled all three of these targets in their triangle. So that's, sort of the nutshell of why I think Ramp could also be an explorer that has moves up into the category that I call explorers with important discoveries. Alrighty. So there you go, folks. I don't know how long this took me. I planned on it being kind of short, but I had a lot of great companies to talk about. And so you can look in I'm going to also do a written report in the next few days. These written reports can take me a few days, especially if I have a lot of companies to write about, which is 14 companies. I think only three of those are sponsors of my shows. So, I'm trying to cover some sponsors and some not sponsors. Some I'm a shareholder in, some I'm not. But just no matter which company you're looking at, take them all as I'm biased because I want to be right about my picks. Okay, that's my biggest bias. I want to be right about my calls and my picks, and that's always my biggest bias. Um, and as always, before making any investment decisions, it's important for you to do your homework. Speak with your financial advisors before making any investment decisions. I've interviewed probably 10 out of these 14 companies that I talked about today. Yeah, almost, I think about 10 of them. So just go to my Substack or rocksandstocks.substack.com, and you can find all those interviews, and you can do a search on there for when I've written about those companies as well. And as always, I don't make buying or selling recommendations. I try to be an idea generator for you to look, these companies, they go through my filter, and then I try to keep the story in front of you with, added commentary as they have important news out. And but I'm an idea generator. You got to make your own decisions based on your risk profile, the amount of homework you do. I just try to be someone who, uses my 30 years of experience and having had great mentors in geophysics, geology, and geochemistry to help be a filter and an idea generator. Do that homework, speak with your financial advisors. Have a great day or evening wherever you are, and we'll talk to you soon.